Thank you, Lorenzo Meyer, for doing this interview with us. I'd like to begin by asking what your reaction is to the PRI-victory in the presidential race and what this means for Mexico.
Well, let us answer this question in two parts. On the one hand, what is the PRI? The PRI is its history. You cannot think of the present situation without going back to history. PRI was born in 1929, and in fact, the founding fathers of the PRI were already in power 10 years before. So the PRI is dominating the whole 20th century of Mexico. The party was created not really to be a competitive organization in a plural environment, but it was created to help the administration of a monopoly of power, to give it a kind of democratic, well, not content, but the democratic form to an authoritarian way of doing politics. PRI remained in power until the year 2000, and they are returning. Peña Nieto and other priistas are claiming that they are very different from their forefathers, that now they are modern, democratic, more than willing to engage with opposition in the political arena in democratic ways, and that we must almost forget what the PRI used to be. But here Harley, I think that I prefer to go slowly with this view of a new PRI. I still can quote Maurice Duverger, a classic political scientist, a French political scientist, that in the 1950s wrote a big book called Political Parties. And at the beginning of his book, he said something that is, well, it's appropriate for this moment. He said, all parties are born with a seal, with a characteristic, central characteristic that they keep the rest of their lives. They can change a little bit, but the essence, the hard core of their values, view of the world, way of doing things remain what it was in the origin. And I think that it's safe, at least for me, to view PRI in the same light. I don't think that the PRI has changed. The origin, the political origin of Peña Nieto is Grupo Atlacomulco in the state of Mexico. This is a group that has its own history of being very, the main characteristic is being very cohesive. They avoid internal fighting. So it's one of the most peculiar and strong groups within the PRI. And right now, PRI has been in power in the state of Mexico for 83 years in a row. So this is the source of what Peña Nieto is telling us. It's a new PRI. But in practice, in his state of Mexico, it remains very much the original PRI, clinging to power. The last election in the state of Mexico was won by PRI in a overwhelming way, in spite of the fact that in the public debate that the candidates had previous to election, the candidate of the PRI performed very badly, but that was irrelevant. What the candidates had to say was really of secondary importance. The fact is that the PRI had a big, huge political machine there. So, if that is the source of the nucleus of the new PRI, I don't think that we have the right to accept before some years that this PRI is a new one. I think that it's safe to start by assuming that the old PRI is back. Now, the second element that we have to consider here is Mexican society. I think that Mexican society has changed, and has changed a lot since those days in which PRI could be in charge of almost everything in Mexico. Let us say in the 1950s. That was the classical period of the PRI, in which everything was decided by everything important in the political life of Mexico was decided by the president, and the PRI was just an instrument of the president, helped him to the administration of the daily political life of the country. Well, now, at the beginning of the 21st century, I think that Mexican society has a different face, a different nature to some extent. You can see that in Mexico City, for example, a stronghold of the left and a subsystem that is very much against PRI and against the return of the PRI at the federal level. Here you have an urban society that is linked, connected with the rest of the world, that is able to see what is happening in every other place in the planet, that is absorbing the ways of doing things that are modern, and that is more or less an educated society. So this new Mexico has in itself islands or huge regions of the old traditional Mexican society. In many ways, the conservative ethos of the Mexican society survived outside Mexico City, in the south and in the north as well, in spite of the differences in human development in these two parts of the country. They share a conservative attitude, and if you compare looking at this global global study of values, of comparative values between societies, Mexico is even more conservative than the United States. So there is a new Mexico, very modern in their attitudes, and is the old one there. I think that PRI is returning because of the support of that part of Mexico. But in the next 6 years, Peña Nieto has to confront also the new Mexico. And I think that the essence of the political process in Mexico in the next sexennium, the next 6 years of Peña Nieto's presidency, we are going to see a clash between these two different ways of doing and looking at the political life. The PRI with its instincts that belong to an authoritarian attitude, and part of the Mexican society that is fed up with authoritarianism, and that is why if Peña Nieto finally is giving the victory by local, well, by the federal electoral authorities, it will be around 36–38% of the vote. It will not be a majority. It will be a relative majority. So it's going to be difficult and tough for both sides. For that part of Mexican society that is unwilling to follow the traditional ways of doing politics that PRI represents, and it's going to be tough for Peña Nieto because he's not used to have plural political system in his hands. The way in which he exerted the political power in the state of Mexico was very much in the old tradition. So one way of looking at what has happened and how it's going to develop in the near future is look at the clash between these two and very different political views and political forces that are shaping Mexico right now.